Hello again, YouTube. My name is RJ and welcome to my workshop. I always look up when I say that because I look at my workshop. That's kind of dumb. All right, let me start this again. Hello YouTube, my name is RJ and welcome to my workshop. Today I want to talk to you about tool storage and organizing toolboxes. I've got a couple of my toolboxes here. And I'm not going to go through every drawer and show you every tool because it's kind of mind-numbing and dull. But I want to give you some ideas, some things to think about, some ways to make you come up with a better way for you to organize your stuff or make yourself more efficient. There are tons of different types of toolboxes, tons of different types of tools, different uses. You know, there's a wide range of different ways you can do things. I've worked out of a bucket with a pile of tools stuffed in the bottom of it. I've worked out of toolboxes that had stuff strewn in it. I've worked out of toolboxes that all the way at the other end of the extreme where every single tool has a predefined location for everything. Highly organized. They all have their place depending on what you're doing. Do you want to carry around a toolbox that has a predefined location for every single thing when you're slogging around in the snow through a junkyard? Probably not. Or at least I don't, because it takes up more room, takes up more space, it's more area that you have to carry around, more weight probably that you have to carry around. You know, sometimes a bag or a bucket is what you need. Other times you need something a little more organized. So you got to find that balance of what you're using it for compared to what it is, you know, what you're trying to do compared to how organized you are, I guess. So I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer. We'll give you a few ideas of what I've done and give you some things to think about, hopefully. Okay, this is the top drawer of my Harbor Freight tool chest. This tool chest has been a really nice addition. This one's quite a bit newer for me. I've had it maybe 2 years. I really like it for the large work surface on top. This is my mobile work box. I'm using this one all the time. You saw my older Craftsman box before, and we'll get into that in a minute. That one's more stationary. That's got additional tools in it. This is my day-to-day mechanics box. This is a good example to me of a little bit of everything in the organizational realm. My ratchets are all right here. My extensions are all over here. They're kind of in a pile. They're not perfectly organized, and they could be. You could do that. But for me, I can walk over here, open this drawer up. Here's a 1/2-inch ratchet. Here's a 3/8 ratchet. Here's a 1/4. You know, I mean, you can grab the stuff that you need fairly quickly. Then the next level of organization is these are Hansen socket rails. They're great. I really enjoy these a lot. Part of the reason I got this box because I knew they fit in here nicely. So this is organizing. You can see where every single one of these things are. Let me go to the other extreme. Here's a bucket full of crow's feet. I don't use these very often. Can you walk up to here quickly and grab a 9/16 crow's feet? Well, I know it's probably not that one because it's really big and that one's kind of small. So I got to sort through and find in this. So this is kind of the bucket mentality, which for this particular piece works fine because I don't use that all the time. And it doesn't take up, it's very concise, very small amount of area, real estate taken up in the box. This area here, I measured it out. So this will give you an example. These ratchets, I believe this was 19 inches by 8 inches is the amount of area that it takes to hold this amount of, this quantity of ratchets. Again, I can get to these, I can find them fairly quickly, it works pretty good. I took all these out, laid them out on top once, so if you were gonna do them perfectly organized, and it was 19 inches by 18 inches to hold this same amount of ratchets. So a little more than double the area that this is taking up. Is that more efficient? Is that more, readily accessible? Yes, but not to a level that I'm willing to give up twice the amount of toolbox space for. So to me, this is a good compromise because these are large. I can you know, the difference between a 3/8 and a 1/2 inch ratchet is very obvious. Whereas a socket, and that's where these organizers, these take up a lot more real estate. If I took these and just piled them in a bucket, they would take up a lot less room, but it would take me forever to find them. So that's kind of the balance that I'm talking about. So everything is kind of, I've got all three areas here. Sockets and ratchets is kind of the mid-level, you know, they have a defined area that they go in. Things that I don't hardly ever use, they're in a bucket. And then sockets, which is something that would be really difficult and really tedious to sort through, they're very well laid out. And then in the back here, I've got my torque wrenches. Not something I use very often. They are kind of difficult to get out. But again, if I use these every day, they'd be organized differently. So again, you just kind of got to work with think about what you're doing and what's the best solution for you. Okay, continuing down in the box, SAE wrenches. I've got a set of ratchet wrenches. I got a set of standard combination wrenches. Very well laid out. Notice how much room this takes up. Here's 4 flare line wrenches. 4 of them over there. They take up next to no room, but you got to kind of sort through them to find them. I've got a set that's laid out. I can open this thing up and in seconds grab it and have at it. In the back here, large wrenches. I just don't have socket rails or wrench rails to go that big. I don't use these that often, and they're big, so they're kind of easy to spot what one's what. Again, little stubby wrenches. These are kind of hidden in the back. I don't use these as much, and I'm not willing to give up the real estate. It would take me, you know, if I laid out all of these out perfectly, it would take up 2 of these drawers. So this is a good combination for me, because the next drawer down is metrics. So in 2 drawers, I can have 2 complete sets, metric and SAE, instead of having 2 drawers dedicated to 1. So again, you're using your high mileage. If I'm working on Caterpillars, and I'm using these huge wrenches all the time, these are going to be laid out nicely up here, and these small wrenches that I hardly ever use would be buried into the back. So again, it's kind of that 70th percentile. You know, the things that I'm using 70% of the time are well organized. Okay, I'm just going to kind of rip through a few of these drawers. This is probably my least organized drawer that could use some organization. Just because you've got a good combination of really small pliers and large pliers. You know, the large ones always seem to kind of rise to the top and the small ones get buried to the back. So I'm probably going to put some sort of a divider in here at some point in time, just to kind of keep the small ones in one area and the larger ones in another area, to make things a little bit quicker, more quickly accessible. Again, I don't need them super, and I'm not flat rate mechanic. This is just a home shop, so I don't need super accessibility. Hammers are easy to lay out. Air tools are in the bottom. They're kind of piled, but I'm not using them that often, so I don't really take a lot of time to go through that. I'm going to move you here. This is probably the other one. These screwdrivers, and this is what happens to them all the time. They fit in here reasonably well. You know, the drawer's not quite long enough for some of the big ones, but every time you close it, you know, by the time you do 2 or 3 of those, these get shoved back there. So this is one of those places where I'm probably going to make a place for every one of the, or at least for the ones that I use all the time. Phillips are back here, straights up here, some picks and accessories off to the side here. So, and really there's not much, you know, hex keys, I don't use them that often. The main ones I use are up front, magnet, mirrors. Always have a couple mirrors around, they're kind of handy, you know, because I need to take care of my hair all the time. Brushes, cleaning. Down here is probably the other big one I use a fair amount. And like right next to the hammers, same level, hammers, punches. You know, just some certain things that work out. Think about PPE drawer. That's kind of nice to have in one place as well. So let me move over to the other box and I'll show you a few other things. Okay, so in my Craftsman box, and this is probably a 1990 vintage. It's a 9-drawer bottom and a 12-drawer top. Really good quality. I'm really pleased with this older one. This drawer here is kind of my fabrication layout drawer. I've got everything from combination squares, angle, speed square, levels, micrometer, feeler gauges, it just makes a nice layout drawer. Ooh, I like this. This is one I just got. Got it at Walmart or one of those places. It's just a fabric tape. Every so often you need to go around something. It's really handy to have the ability to do that. So I kind of like that. So this is kind of my measuring fabrication layout type place. It works pretty good for me. All my angle grinder stuff's in one drawer. Nothing too spectacular there. Drills, thread chasers, transfer punches, kind of, again, it's a catch-all. These drawers I'm not using all of the time. Taps, again, not really well laid out and not real good for them either. My larger taps are kind of shoved in the front here and leaning on one another, and so probably not the best way to organize those either. Some pipe stuff. The other one I wanted to show you is files, and this is my file drawer. Some of these are stacked up in the back here, and files are another one of those things, kind of like the taps, that you don't want them resting on one another. This isn't perfectly organized, but at least for the most part, they're not piled on top of one another and rubbing on each other and wearing themselves too much. Like I say, there are a couple back here. This is a really good, a good place to have a single location for each thing, because it can be detrimental to the actual tool to be able to have them stacked up like that. So, there are some places where you do want to spread things out and have them, really well laid out for that reason. So that just is to give you some ideas to think about. There's a balance between space and organization. Like I say, especially this top drawer is the one that's kind of gives you a good example of all of the different ideas. If you're doing if you've got a toolbox next to a machining center, and there's 8 tools that you use and that's what you use all the time, those things should be laid out, and it's a production type environment. You should have every one of those things laid out exactly where you need it and be able to put your hand on it and see when it's missing right now. If you've got as many tools as I've got stuffed into this one box, if you had them all laid out individually and had their own individual spot, you're going to need 1.5 of these boxes at least to do all of that. So there's a balance. There is a trade-off. If you need it, by all means, go ahead and do it. If you don't need it, it's not necessarily worth it. There's a whole topic out there about not using toolboxes, because every time you want a tool, you got to open this thing. There are a lot of people that are going to carts that have open tool storage on the outside. You see people that have their workbenches with tools lined up on the backside. It's a very fast, easy way to do it. That's a good thing if you're going to be to that singular location. If I took all my screwdrivers and hung them up behind my tool bench, which you see a lot of times, when I'm working on a car in the back corner of the shop or whatever, I got to go back and forth every time, whereas I can take this with me. So again, there's a lot of different ways to do it. I just want to kind of make you think about it. There's a lot of people that oogle over the foam cutout, perfectly laid out toolboxes. I think they're fascinating. There's some of them that are really good, and some of them are very useful. They have a purpose, but sometimes that purpose doesn't really justify it. If you're not doing a singular type of task, it might not be the best way to do it. So just food for thought. Think about what you're doing. Think about different ways to do it. Be creative. That's the biggest thing. I just like having a fresh idea, fresh look at it, and try to kind of come up with a better way to build the mousetrap. So thanks again for coming out in the shop with me. I appreciate you having out here. If you get a chance and you're interested in these workshop videos, down below, if you can hit subscribe, and when I post new videos up, you'll be able to check them out right away. Thanks again for coming out and being in the shop.